Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. The WBO rankings can often be compared to a car crash, and there's a little bit about that in the latest rankings for September that have been released. And actually, it's a bit of a reordering of the deck chairs on the Titanic situation, because it's the same 15 as the last 15, just a reordering of where the names are. But if we start at the top, we've got Alexander Povetkin. He occupies the number 1 slot. You'd have to imagine that the rankings, this list of 15, it was decided before the Joshua and Povetkin fight on September 22nd, but has been released subsequently. So I'm not reading too much into that. I think Povetkin, he will drop down when the next rankings is released. Number 2, Dillian Whyte. He occupies the same spot as last month. Interestingly, though, in last month's edition, they didn't have the international title next to his name. But at number 2, if he doesn't get an Anthony Joshua rematch, which is the talk that if Joshua can't get a deal done with Wilder or Fury or whoever, then Dillian Whyte is the odds-on favourite to be Joshua's next opponent for his April the 13th date at Wembley. And you'd have to imagine the way things are going, the short time frame that Eddie Hearn is giving Wilder to negotiate, that Dillian Whyte is going to be a hot favourite to be in that fight with Joshua. But if it doesn't happen, he's going to probably be ordered to be an eliminator of sorts with whoever is the next available guy. And that could be number 3, Bryant Jennings. And Jennings, he is the big winner in these rankings. He shot up from last month where he was number 8, and he is now number 3. And that's on the strength of his win over Alexander Dmytrenko in August. So he's picked up the NABO strap, the North American Boxing Association title. And yeah, he's in a pretty good position. So at some point, Jennings is likely to be in line potentially for an elimination fight. You'd have to imagine that with Bob Arum, his promoter's connections with the WBO, that's partly responsible for his rise in the rankings here, but obviously the in-ring performance against Dmytrenko. And I actually got a question from someone saying, did I think that Jennings could sort of go as high as number 3 in the latest rankings? And I said, yeah, I wasn't really sure what would happen. I thought it was unlikely given he was at 8, but it's happened. And, you know, as with boxing, sometimes, you know, things you don't expect to happen do happen. And he's in a pretty good slot now, and he's sitting pretty to get some sort of action with an eliminator at some point in the future, you'd imagine. At number 4, Tom Schwarz of Germany. He actually fought earlier this month, fought a guy, Julian Fernandez, who was an unbeaten guy. If you haven't seen the clip to that, Schwarz just absolutely demolished Fernandez in the second round. Fernandez, no defense, just got absolutely destroyed. So you'd have to imagine that Schwarz, who's number 4 in the WBO right now and has been for some months, he's 22-0. 22-0, and there's not much on the record of note. That actually it's time he took a bigger fight. And if Dillian Whyte, if he took on Anthony Joshua in a voluntary for April, that could potentially pave the way for Schwarz and Jennings to be ordered into a final eliminator. And that would really tell us a lot about Tom Schwarz and how good he really is. Because at the moment, we just don't know. There were some spots in his fight against Senad Gashi, who's a bit of a banger, where he looked a bit uncomfortable. But that was obviously a bit of a dirty fight with lots of fouls. Gashi, headbutts, all sorts of different bits and pieces happened in that fight. And Schwarz got the disqualification win. But he needs to actually face some guys to actually tell us how good he is. Because honestly, I don't know. Jarrell Miller at 5. He's dropped from number 3 from a month ago. And Miller, he's not having a good time of it, actually. And I'll tell you why, because he was ordered to face Kubrat Pulev a while ago. He said, no thank you. He got dropped from the IBF rankings. He's not in the WBC rankings because he won't sign up to the clean boxing program. Now he's fallen from 3rd to 5th in the WBO rankings. And in the WBA rankings, where he's actually pinned his hopes, he's quite high up there as well, he's pinned his hopes on a title shot for the regular title against Manuel Charr. And as we know, Manuel Charr was due to fight Fraser Kendo this month, but it was cancelled because of alleged doping by Charr. And now Cha has come out with B samples. He's put stuff on his social media saying, actually, look at this, I'm innocent, I'm innocent. But we still haven't heard from the WBA on what is happening. Is Cha in the clear? But the result of all this is Jarrell Miller's title shot could be going up in smoke, because who knows what's going to happen and when. Because if Cha is innocent, obviously he's still the champion. They still owe Fraser Kendo a title shot. And there could be others who might usurp Miller's place. They're going to have to do something with Trevor Bryan, the interim champion, because they can't have an interim champion forever. And if Cha was found guilty, I thought that Kendo and Bryan potentially may fight. But Miller, yeah, it's not coming up Jarrell Miller at the moment. He's pinned all his hopes, put all his eggs into the WBA basket, and it's not working out. And if and when he does get a shot in the WBA, who knows when that will be? It could be the middle of next year or later. He's going to have to make some decisions, because he's on a DAZN deal at the moment, 2-fight deal. He's fighting the first against Thomas Adamek next week, a fight no one wanted to see him in, a fight no one is talking about, a fight no one cares about, and a fight that is losing Jarrell Miller credit. He's got another a fight on his deal with DAZN, and I'm sure DAZN and promoter Eddie Hearn do not want to see Miller in again with a Thomas Adamek type. That shaped as a stay busy, and Miller's been saying he needed that because he needed to bridge the gap till he gets his title shot. And that title shot may not come. So they're going to have to reassess what they're going to do and where they're going to go, because the WBA route, who knows what's going to happen with that. Number 6, Zhilei Zhang. So he has defended his Oriental title this month against Don Hainsworth. So this is another situation where Zhilei Zhang, so he's advanced to 20-0, KO'd Don Hainsworth in the 3rd round, had him down in the 2nd. He looked just okay. He did some nice body work. There were a few nice things that he did. He fought in spurts where he'd just sort of explode and be active, and then sort of go back into a shell. Looked a little bit sort of lethargic, you know, sort of moving in molasses. But he was hittable. And it's hard to say, how good is this guy? He's been in these rankings for quite some time, in a number of rankings for a number of years. He's 35, 20-0. Really faced no one of note. What's he going to do? And he is in these rankings as high as he is because he's got this Oriental title. And this is going to be a theme you're going to see coming through, because the WBA values its regional belts. So you've got Dillian Whyte at the top, international. You've got Bryant Jennings, the NABO belt. Tom Schwartz, the Intercontinental belt. The Oriental belt here, and we'll go through some of the rest as we go down, because some of these guys who are in the rankings right now, based on the body of work that they've sort of put together, you could argue they don't deserve to be there. And Zhilei Zhang's a bit of a marginal call, because Don Hainsworth ain't much chop. It will probably see him maintained just off the strength of this Hainsworth win, which was after these rankings were released. He could end up just staying here sort of static around the sort of 6, 7, 5 mark in the WBO rankings for the next couple of months. Just sort of seems to be, if you hold on to the strap, you're active every now and then, you can just keep treading water. But treading water for what? What's this guy going to do? He's 35, 20-0. You got to make a move. And that also goes for number 7, Kyotaru Fujimoto, the Japanese heavyweight who's got the Asia Pacific strap, which he defended this week. And this was after the rankings were obviously decided. But he's faced a former middleweight, a guy that campaigned at middleweight and super middleweight for the majority of his career. A Thai fighter, Sutat Kalalek, retired him in the 6th round. But, you know, Fujimoto, another guy that's just been sort of treading water, but for what? What's he doing? Where are the actual step-up fights? Where's the competition? What is he actually sort of aiming to do with his career here? Taking nothing fights for a prolonged period. Same with Zhang. Okay, at number 8, we've got Tyrone Spong. He's just picked up recently the Latino strap, and that was against a guy called Santander Salgado, and that was a 1st-round knockout. Pretty brutal, actually. If you can see that footage, there's also a funny clip where his manager tried to give him a high five after the fight, and Spong denied him, not realizing that his manager wanted the high five. But Spong's another guy. You look at the record here, there's not a huge amount of note, but it'll be good to see him in some more competitive fights. I mean, we've got a number of guys here that have just gone through: Schwartz, Zhang, Fujimoto, Spong. Be good to see them in some better fights. Dominic Breazeale, he's been quite inactive. He hasn't had a fight this year, and he's paying for it. He's been dropped down from, what was he last month? He was 5th in the rankings. So in another couple of months, he would have been out of the ring an entire year. He's made some noise about wanting to fight Dillian Whyte, wanting to potentially put his WBC mandatory status on the line. He wants to get back in the ring. He wants a payday. But until then, you know, he's going to see this continue to happen across the board in different sanctioning bodies. So he's fallen 4 spots to number 9 here. Number 10, Ajit Kabial. He hasn't had a fight in a while. He's dropped, I think it's 1 spot from last month, from 9th to 10th. At 11, Otto Wallen, so he's the same as he was last month. Junior Fa, he holds the Oriental International title, which I believe was a new belt. Fa, he last fought in June against a guy called Luis Pascual, and that was in New Zealand. Wasn't a great fight, and Fa is looking to be back in the ring. I think it's in an 8-rounder in November. He's had a few health issues, but this is another case of, you know, he's got a regional title. This has helped get him the ranking and maintain it. Derek Chisora, he's sort of maintained his 13th spot in the rankings. At 14, we have Ebenezer Tete. So this is a guy as well. I mean, it comes back to, you know, we've got a number of questionable sort of inclusions in the rankings higher up as I've sort of indicated. But if we look at Ebenezer Tete, so he's 18-0. He's been campaigning almost exclusively in Africa, by the look of it, in Ghana. Most of these guys, some of them aren't very good. They're effectively, 4-25, 18-20, 18-22, 12-36. It's just a screed of journeymen that he's been working his way through. But that has apparently been enough to get himself a ranking. So I really haven't seen much of this guy. I don't know how good he is. And there's not a lot of buzz about him, but he's been doing enough to and paying his sanctioning fees to get ranked. So he's at 14th in the rankings. And it's a little bit the same as this guy at 15th here, Ali Aaron Demirezen. I hope I got the pronunciation right there. Not a guy I'm completely familiar with. He's actually got a couple of stars against his name here. He holds the WBO Europe title, but I'm not exactly. It doesn't actually list what the stars denote. Why he's got them next to his name. Usually it's a medical thing, or he's been put in there pending something happening, like drug testing or whatever. So I mean, it's interesting. I mean, they haven't actually spelled that out. But in terms of 15th, if you look at his record, it's more of the same like Ebenezer Tete. I mean, if you look at it, there's not much there. He's got a couple, a number of journeymen here, Michael Sprott being the most high profile among them. But there's a number of guys like Demirezen and Tete and Zhang and Fujimoto and Schwartz, Spong. We just don't know how good they are. They haven't been in some of these at least mid-level sort of step-up fights. Otto Wallen, he fought Adrian Granat recently. Kabial obviously had the step-up against Chisora. Some of these other guys are sort of minted contenders, but there's just too many guys here that are ranked in a position where they've done really not enough to justify it. And that's just my view. What do you make of it? What do you make of these rankings in general? I mean, obviously we've got Jennings vaulting up to 3rd. We have Miller dropping down. It's the sort of latest blow to his career. Nothing is coming up Jarrell Miller at the moment, and no one's really looking forward to his fight next week. And we have Dominic Breazeale drop down, and the rest are just sort of shuffled around a bit. Drop a comment loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter. Boxing_squared. I'm out.